Buen día y good morning, good day to everyone who's joining us. Le damos la bienvenida para asegurarnos que todas las personas que están aquí pueden escuchar esta llamada en su idioma, so everyone can listen to and participate in your own language in this call. I just want to invite you to choose in the globe that is at the bottom right of your screen the language in which you would like to hear this call. Solamente para que se aseguren que todas las personas que están aquí ya pueden escoger en un globo que aparece en la parte inferior derecha, donde pueden escoger el idioma desde el cual quieren participar y escuchar esta llamada. Bueno, desde ya, bienvenidas y bienvenidos. Welcome. Cynthia.
We welcome you. We welcome you all to this second webinar in a series of 3 dedicated to unearthing the racist roots of the climate crisis. Today, as you know, our focus is on the testimonies of resistance by Indigenous peoples. This series is a creative collaboration by 3 groups: the Center for Climate Justice and Faith here at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, a part of California Lutheran University; the Certificate in Racial Justice and Faith, also here at PLTS; and Lutherans Restoring Creation. To begin, we note the importance of this day, Juneteenth. It is fitting that this session happens on this day. The enslavement of African people and the genocidal attack on Indigenous peoples of the lands that became known as the Americas are, as you all know, inextricably connected. Both are the terrible fruit of colonialism and its enactment of white supremacy in its most virulent form. Moreover, the colonizing disease of white supremacy continues to fester today as an underpinning of climate change and the racial injustice that accompanies it. So, in learning more about Indigenous resistance to climate colonialism and other forms of environmental racism today, we honor the unimaginably courageous resistance of enslaved Africans and their descendants. And we gain power for dismantling white supremacy and for radically reshaping society along the lines of justice, compassion, and ecological sanity. In that vein, our 2 speakers today are Sarah Augustine and Josias Viera. Sarah Augustine is a Pueblo, that is Tewa, descendant, and is co-founder and executive director of the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. She is also co-founder of the Suriname Indigenous Health Fund. Sarah has represented the interests of Indigenous community partners in many national and international venues, including the United Nations, the Organization of American States Commission on Human Rights, and the World Health Organization. She is a columnist for the Anabaptist World, and she co-hosts the Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery podcast. Sarah has taught at a number of universities and lives in Washington State, where she serves on multiple boards and commissions to enable vulnerable peoples to speak for themselves in advocating for structural change. She is author of the book, The Land is Not Empty, Following Jesus in Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. Yes. And she is co-author with Sherry Hostetler of So We and Our Children May Live, Following Jesus in Confronting the Climate Crisis. That is a brilliant book. I use it as a required book in one of my courses, and everyone should read it. Josias Viera Kaeté, a Black man of Kaeté indigenous ancestry, is the founder and pastor of the We in Creation movement, a movement of evangelical environmentalists in Brazil seeking to build decolonial Christian eco-theology as a way of doing theology. The movement hosts the School of Eco-theology, a nationwide project for leaders of evangelical churches in Brazil. I would like to visit and learn from that school. He serves also on the pastoral team of the Iglesia Bautista in Coqueiral, which is un barrio of Recife in Brazil. Dr. Viera, Kaeté, holds a master's degree in theology and a PhD in religious sciences from the Catholic University of Pernambuco, and he holds a specialization in environmental and cultural education. A theologian by training and a decolonial ecologist by conversion, he is a collaborator at the Martin Luther King Jr. School of Faith and Politics and takes part in a number of groups such as the Post-Colonial Research Group. Josias is married to Jessica Diaz and is the father of Luana Viera Kaeté. It is our great honor and our delight to host these two leaders and to learn from their wisdom. They will be interviewed by Reverend Dr. Nedy Astudillo, who is the coordinator of the Spanish language certificate in climate justice and faith here at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, and Reverend Dr. Cheryl Johnson, who serves as coordinator of the certificate in racial justice and faith, also a program at PLTS. So, Doctors Astudillo and Johnson, take it away for us.
Muchas gracias, Cynthia. Una petición para Sarah Berg para poder comenzar a grabar también en español, por favor. Gracias.
And Sarah, you have that petition?
Okay, I just took it away. You should be able to record.
Good.
Good.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that beautiful welcoming and situating us in time and in our community that's going to be discussing today. As we continue to get started, we've prepared several questions that Sarah and Josias will be responding to. So perhaps I'll ask Josias to respond first this time. But to begin, we just wanted to hear a bit more from each of you about your context. So to introduce us to your land, to its peoples, to the communities of all life, all creation, all species. And perhaps on a more personal level, if you'd like to share, if there's a pivotal moment in your life that brought you into this work at the intersection of climate and racial justice. So Josias, I would like to invite you, if you would be willing to share first, to introduce us to your context and to your story a bit more.
Ya puedo. Ok. Bueno, pido permiso inicialmente para hacer una saudación en mi lenguaje materna, que es el tupí. Entonces, tia pecoema opa oraporã ixe jurucaeté. Perdón a nuestras traductoras por eso. Bueno, yo hablé que es un buen día a todos y todas y a toda la creación. Mi nombre ancestral es Juru Kaeté, pero que mi nombre occidental es Josias Viera. Gostaria inicialmente de dar muchas gracias a Nedy, mi hermana querida, que invitó a estar acá con vosotros y vosotras. Y a todas las otras personas que estoy a conocer hoy, y mi hermana parente Sara, parente de otro pueblo, pero que los pueblos indígenas son parte de una misma familia. Entonces, saudações ancestrais, hermana querida. Bueno, yo para responder la primera pregunta, ¿cómo es mi contexto? ¿Cómo yo presentaría mi tierra? Bien, yo me presentaría como un hijo de la Mata Atlántica con el Océano Atlántico. Soy de la ciudad de Recife, en del estadio del Pernambuco, en Brasil, que en siglo XIX se tornó un país, pero que por mucho poquito tiempo, por ter sido suplantado, oprimido por el estadio brasileño, que es desde su construcción es un estado colonial, ¿no? Mi pueblo Kaeté es un pueblo ancestral de este territorio, del el litoral, como yo dice, hijo de la mata atlántica con el océano Atlántico, y mucho lutó contra el colonialismo, pero que nosotros fomos oprimidos por la fuerza del Estado y muchos de nosotros fueron muertos y muertas en el siglo XVII. Yo soy un remanescente de muchas personas que están dispersas por el territorio. Mas nosotros estamos aquí, estamos vivos, por eso el pueblo Caeté está vivo. Mi ciudad es cortada por tres ríos que son el río Beberibe, el río Capibaribe y el río Terripió. Y tenemos una brincadera donde decimos que el océano Atlántico es formado pelo encuentro de los ríos Beberibe y Capibaribe. Entonces, solamente por conta de esos dos ríos es que el océano Atlántico existe. Es una brincadera de mi pueblo, obvio. Entonces, mi ciudad tiene 488 años y está establecida dentro del territorio Caeté, que es una parte de la gran nación Tupinambá. Nosotros en Recife somos un pueblo mucho rico en cultura multicultural, o sea, tenemos una cultura riquísima en música, manifestaciones de la calle, las artes plásticas. Somos formados mayoritariamente por pueblos negros e indígenas y por eso vítimas de una enorme disparidade, distância econômica entre os mais ricos e os mais pobres. Mas os que são mais pobres financeiramente são massacrados por eles ricos, são quem tem a possibilidade de experimentar a relação com o território. Los ricos no lo quieren, solo quieren para hacer de la tierra mercadoría. Pero que los pueblos experimentan dos cosas: la relación con el territorio y, en contrapartida, el racismo religioso y ambiental. Nuestro bioma es muy diverso. Tenemos muchos árboles, muchas hierbas que ofrecen, que nos donan cura para el cuerpo y la alma. En nuestra fauna tenemos una gran diversidad de animales, muchos amenazados en vía de extinción, otros tentando resurgir. En la Mata Atlántica, sobre todo, tenemos en la ciudad de Paudalho, es una ciudad muy próxima a mi ciudad. Tenemos lo último fragmento de Mata Atlântica preservada. E gostaria de aproveitar esta oportunidade para denunciar lo gran intento del ejército brasileño que tenta deflorestar este fragmento para la construcción de un complexo militar. Eso significa matar las nacientes de ríos, imposibilitar que los más pobres tengan acceso a la agua y también deflorestando, matar unas centenas de especies que tentan resurgir de la extinción. Entonces, el Estado brasileño hoy hace una gran violencia contra la naturaleza por deflorestar 200.000 árboles en el fragmento de Mata Atlántica en Pernambuco. Eso junto con el gobierno estadual de Pernambuco y el ejército brasileño. Entonces, muchas gracias por estar aquí y me oírem hacer essa denúncia. Pido fuertemente que haçam nosotras podamos hacer con que esta denuncia pueda accesar muchas otras personas para que nos no pasemos por eso y podamos proteger nuestra madre tierra. Perdón por la emoción con eso. Nuestro pueblo es, como dice, mayoritariamente descendente de pueblos ancestrales y habitan esta tierra. Tuvieron su tierra robada para el pueblo, los pueblos indígenas, y también somos nosotros compuestos de pueblos que fueron secuestrados de la África, sobre todo pueblos bantos, nagós, auxás y jeje. Entonces, es mi tierra, es nuestra condición hoy. Estoy trabajando con mis hermanos y mis hermanas junto a algunas poblaciones donde se sufre con la incidencia de especulación inmobiliaria que hace con que los ríos en los periodos de la lluvia transborden y las personas que no tienen donde morar tengan sus casas destruidas, sus vidas enteras y perdan todo que lo tienen. Entonces, voy a parar aquí para que mi hermana Sara pueda hablar también sobre su territorio. Mi parenta. Gracias.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for introducing us to the richness, the beauty, and also the struggles of this moment. Sarah, I would love to hear from you as well.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Josias, for your comments. I'm so grateful, my brother. You have ignited passion in me also. So I want to introduce the land of my people, which we call the United States now. I want to introduce it to people who haven't grown up in this context, and also to people who have grown up in this context. There are more than 570 federally recognized tribes in the United States, which is to say that all of the United States is Indian country. And yet most people in the United States grow up knowing nothing about this. In fact, more than 570 peoples have federal recognition, that is recognition from our federal government, but many, many more than that do not have federal recognition. We are a nation full of indigenous peoples, each one with its own language and cosmology and culture. The process of settler colonialism is like this. A nation comes in and displaces a civilization that's already there and then denies its existence. And that is very much the process that is ongoing as a matter of law and policy in the United States. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My people, the Tewa people, are from the territory we now call Northern New Mexico. I grew up in the big city of that region, like most Native Americans today. In fact, 70% of us reside in urban areas. In 1970, just 45% of us lived in urban areas. In 1970, that's the generation in which I was born. In 1945, the generation of my father, just 4% of us lived in urban areas. The legal and policy structure in the United States is designed to remove indigenous people from our lands. And that is a policy incentive that is ongoing. And yet land and water protectors in the United States and across North America are indigenous. It's indigenous peoples that are rising up to protect our sacred lands and waters, not just for ourselves and our descendants and on behalf of our ancestors, but for everyone. So as the United States empire removes us from our lands in order to better pursue natural resources that are on our lands, they are also displacing the hope and the energy for all people in our country to stave off disaster. That is the disaster of ecological overshoot. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But ecological overshoot is the process of consuming what we call resources from the earth and stripping our life support systems, the life support systems that we depend on, all life, all human beings, all the four-leggeds, all the mammals, all the birds, all of us depend on these life support systems, and we are consuming them faster than they can replenish themselves. And climate change is just an outcome of that. So I think the question also asked if there was a pivotal moment for me, and there was a pivotal moment. I began my career on a multidisciplinary research team in Suriname, South America. And in my role on that research team, I was the one social scientist there. And I was really there to help smooth the process between the scientific team and the people that were living in communities there in the interior region of Suriname. And I came across an elder there at a meeting. It was an all-day meeting. It's outside of the tropics, quite warm, and working with translators to connect our scientific team. They were working on the impacts of gold mining on indigenous populations. So I'm trying to negotiate communication between them and the community members alongside multiple translators. And this elder walked up to me and she kind of thumped me on the chest and said, "Are you going to fight with us?" And she wasn't looking at the leader of the research team. She wasn't looking at all these PhDs and experts. She was looking at me. And that was shocking to me because I thought, well, what are you talking to me for? You know, I'm just a hired help. And she said, "Help us or go away." And I realized she's talking to me because I'm the one person here that she can identify as a person, an indigenous person. And so I told her, well, I don't know what I can do, but I'll help you. I commit to helping. And that commitment has shaped my entire life. That commitment was really around following the money trail for how corporations and foreign entities could come and extract resources on indigenous people's lands, completely decimate those lands, which leads to death and disability, massive health impacts on indigenous populations without any need for redress. Following that money trail, and on that trail, it became clear that all indigenous peoples on all continents face the same devastation. All of that is completely legal, and that climate change is a part of that. I'll end there. Thank you.
Gracias, gracias, Sarah, y gracias.
Nettie, could
Oh,
I
yes.
ask you very quickly before we go on, could I ask you to briefly tell newcomers how to access the translation when Josias speaks? Or when
Sí.
anyone speaks, how newcomers can access the
Cómo no,
translation.
seguro sí. A las personas que recién han llegado, en la parte inferior derecha ustedes van a encontrar un globo y allí si hacen clic allí encontrarán dos opciones para escuchar en español o para escuchar en inglés. Así entonces pueden tener acceso a la interpretación. Gracias, Cintia. Bueno, y gracias a Sarah y a Josias por ya irnos adentrando al tema de de cómo se puede experimentar y se vive el colonialismo y el racismo en las estructuras sociales y también ahora en las raíces de la crisis ambiental y climática. Para hacer la próxima pregunta, me gustaría compartir una cita de la profesora Cintia Moilovida, aquí con nosotros en nuestra llamada, que me abre los ojos cada vez que la escucho y me ayuda a enfocar este tema. En el libro Eco-Reforma o Eco-Reformation, ella dice, el cambio climático puede ser la manifestación de mayor alcance del privilegio blanco y del privilegio de clase que haya enfrentado hasta ahora la humanidad. El cambio climático está causado en su inmensa mayoría por las personas que más consumen en el mundo y que desproporcionalmente descienden de Europa. Entonces, para comprender esta realidad desde su contexto, ¿pudieran compartir, por favor, cómo se vive esta realidad del colonialismo y el racismo en la crisis ambiental y climática en sus contextos? Y tal vez hasta en las soluciones propuestas por la economía verde que proviene de las culturas que consumen y quieren seguir consumiendo más y más en el mundo. Le voy a dar la oportunidad tal vez a Josias primero y luego a Sarah. Gracias.
Gracias, hermana. Es una pregunta buena y muy compleja, muy complexa, ¿no? Porque estamos diante de un mundo muy complexo. Pero que antes de hablar al respecto, yo no hablé sobre cómo yo tengo el momento decisivo, ¿no? En mi caminada. Entonces voy a responder a esta cuestión con un poquito de esta otra, porque trabajar la justicia, sea ambiental o racial, es algo inherente a los que siguen a Jesús de Nazaret. Y no tengo mucho como escapar de la persona del pastor y de la persona del profesor, porque siempre busco un paso antes para poder hablar de un asunto. Entonces, para mí, me posicionar en la lucha contra el racismo y contra la destrucción del medio ambiente es una prerrogativa de quien sigue a Jesús. Al menos es o que se espera de las personas que siguen a Jesús. Mas para allá hay un proceso que me fue llevando a entender eso y ocurre en decorrencia de la retomada de mi identidad ancestral. Y yo vengo, como dice, como un hombre negro de ancestralidad indígena Kaeté. Entendo que mi lucha por justicia sigue el proceso por lo cual pasaron mis ancestrales que vivían en armonía en la creación, por ver su madre tierra ser destruida, necesitaban luchar contra eso. Entonces, mi punto comienza en mi infancia, mirando mi abuela y mi abuelo, lidando con la tierra y comprendiendo su relación armónica como una forma de honrar a Dios. Cualquier cosa que pudesse destruir eso es un absurdo que contradice todo lo que se puede aprender con el movimiento de Jesús. En proceso de articular la conexión entre racismo, colonialismo, devastación ecológica en el contexto, infelizmente como cristiano no puedo cerrar mis ojos para el fato de que el cristianismo moldó el occidente. Y ese moldar, ese formatar occidente se dio a partir de la premisa de, por ejemplo, hoy denominarmos la teología del dominio. Eso es un gran problema que para mí, de punto de vista teológico, se pone a formatar el mundo que vivimos. Cuando el cristianismo que formató el Occidente tiene como premisa dominar todas las cosas, dominar a partir de la exploración, eso hace con que no solamente la tierra, como si era poco, no es poco, mas no solamente la tierra, como las personas, como el cuerpo de las personas no blancas. Entonces, la exploración de la tierra y la exploración de los cuerpos de las personas no blancas es como una forma ainda más extrema. El cuerpo de la mujer son desdobramientos del colonialismo. Porque para el colonialismo, todo lo que se aproxima del natural es algo a ser explorado. Entonces, así es el cuerpo de la mujer, el cuerpo de las personas no blancas, los cuerpos dentro del grupo de las personas no blancas, los pueblos indígenas. Tenemos en Brasil una persona que representa un movimiento, que si fuera el expresidente, que hace una charla que dice que los pueblos indígenas están sentados sobre una riqueza de minérios. Con eso, ello quiere decir que los pueblos tienen que ser sacados de lá para que esa riqueza sea explorada, pero que no pasa por la cabeza, la mente de esas personas, porque no cabe dentro de su horizonte de interpretación, que no es minerio, no es riqueza, es la tierra, es lo cuerpo de esas personas. Entonces, no se tira ninguém de su cuerpo. Entonces, articular eso es un proceso continuado. El racismo y la devastación del medio ambiente es un desdobramiento del colonialismo. Entonces, yo podría hablar muchas y muchas personas, filósofos, pensadores europeos cristianos que legitimaron el pensamiento de la teología de la dominación. Y tenemos una infinidad de personas. La forma que nosotros podemos hacer un camino es haciendo una reinterpretación de la fe. Yo diría del cristianismo, pero que es muy complejo, muy difícil hacer una separación de cristianismo de exploración. Es muy difícil. Entonces, tenemos que hacer una nueva interpretación de la fe y de la revelación para que nosotros podamos nos encontrar nuevamente con el movimiento de Jesús, con lo convite de Dios a el ministerio de reconciliación. Entonces, la forma que miro que hace una articulación es que el colonialismo es una origen de pensamiento, de exploración, y eso se desdobra en la exploración de los cuerpos, de todo lo que es diferente de arquetipo blanco, hombre, eurocentrado. Gracias.
Gracias, Josias. Sara, adelante. Gracias.
Thank you. So the connection between, I think you asked, racism, colonialism, and ecological devastation. So everything comes from this logic of extraction. And we call this logic of extraction colonialism. It's the idea that Josias was just talking about, that someone is empowered to have dominion over everything. and that the earth and its life support systems are really just raw resources that can be turned into a commodity at the whim of those people who have the authority to overtake that. They have the authority to say, this is my stuff, and I'm going to transform this stuff so that I can be enriched. I myself, my kin, my descendants will be enriched. And so that we call colonialism. And it is racist in its intent and in the way that it's manifested. The doctrine of discovery, which is a body of law and policy that shaped international law, certainly law in the United States, designated Christian monarchs as the only ones empowered by God to come into lands that were previously undiscovered and to have dominion over those lands completely, complete sovereignty over those lands, to the devastation of the people, the original peoples of those lands, the indigenous peoples. And the way that that demonstrates itself today is numerous. In the United States, indigenous peoples have the lowest ranking in every single indicator that you can find for well-being. We have the lowest life expectancy. We have the highest maternal and child death. We have the lowest home ownership. We have the highest rates of suicide, the highest rates of risk for drug and alcohol abuse, all indications of a policy incentive to remove indigenous peoples from our lands. And so this is not, many of you be asking, what does this have to do with climate justice? But I'm going to tell you, this is, indigenous justice is climate justice. So, you know, the climate crisis that we're in now is a manifestation or a symptom of this extractive logic, this logic that says everything that is here is for those of us in power to consume to our heart's content without any regard for the people of the future, for those people that are vulnerable around us, or even for the earth itself. And so the reason I want to bring that up is because in the United States, as we are seeking solutions to climate crisis, we're using the same extractive logic to say, how do we solve this problem? Oh, cars are causing too much carbon to go into the atmosphere. What we need are better cars, which is a kind of insanity in hypnosis. What we have is a complex society, 330 million people who need transportation systems. But why would the solution to too many cars be more cars? I cannot understand that. So we're going to create more cars. The Guardian magazine says that the US demand for lithium is going to be 3 times the global demand in a short period of time. And so where does that lithium come from? This is the impact on indigenous and vulnerable peoples. That lithium comes from the lands of indigenous people. People in that are in the Andes regions, the Andean Triangle, are already disappearing. They're being disappeared, and those activists, indigenous activists who are advocating for their lands, are already being disappeared and arrested and imprisoned for the process of protecting their own homelands. This is also the case in the United States. Where is the copper for all of these electric cars coming from? From the lands of indigenous peoples. And so I've actually been in meetings with Christians who have said to me, well, Sarah, you know, this is the end of the world, so indigenous people are going to have to take one for the team. We're just going to have to be able to take these minerals so that we can save the world. What kind of thinking is this? You're going to damage the aquifers and the sacred lands of our people so that you can build cars? How is that saving the universe? We have to imagine a reversal of this logic, which is the logic of uncreation. We hear in Romans chapter 1 that the divine nature of the creator and the divine, that creator's eternal power is demonstrated in creation itself, so that we are without excuse. That's what it says in Romans chapter 1. We understand the nature of the creator through as it is expressed in creation itself. What is that? Faithfulness, cyclical, integration, mutual dependence, all of these life support systems working together that we are a part of. We're part of it, and we're not the center. Every one of us, everything we do matters, and we're not the center. That's what we see. Those are the cycles of life we see in creation. And yet we continue as a society to pursue a linear, reductive, extractive logic that is hurting Indigenous people and vulnerable people first, but will ultimately lead to the demise of us all. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah and Josias, and so much synergy, yet different nuance in what you both have shared. So helpful, so helpful. I just wanted to pause to note that I see some questions starting to come in the Q&A area. So please do post in English or Spanish any questions you have, and we hope to get to those at the end. Moving forward, and this time maybe I'll ask you first, Sarah, just to mix things up. We want to really emphasize that Indigenous communities are, as you've already named, are not merely victims, but are very much on the front line of the resistance to colonialism and to climate change. So we just wanted you both to reflect a little bit more about the resistance to climate change and how that's emerging in your context, both in terms of practicalities, but also to look perhaps at the traditions, the wisdom, the spirituality that folks are drawing on in that resistance. You can speak personally, you can speak about movements. Please answer as it feels right. Sarah, I'd like to invite you to go first.
Our movement is the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. You can find us at dismantlediscovery.org. This is a movement for everyone. Please join us. It's not a metaphor. We really mean to dismantle the legal and policy structure that is dominating all people and the earth. In the cosmology that I've learned from my elders, I've been taught that the very first thing that I do in the morning when I wake up, this morning and every morning, when I'm still a little bit dazed and I'm not quite awake and I haven't even put my feet on the ground yet, to give thanks for the breath that's entering my body as soon as I'm conscious of it, because that breath is the animator, the great animator that is entering my body, that I am being animated by the great animator in the sacred relationship of life. In the morning, I go downstairs and have a cup of coffee and stand outside on my patio and pray at dawn, as I've been instructed to do and my people have done for tens of thousands of years. And in that space, I am acknowledging with reverence the creation that surrounds me. That's not a sentimental opportunity for me to just sort of wax philosophical. What I'm doing is acknowledging the trees right there in my little postage stamp size yard in the city where I live, that they are creating the oxygen that I need to breathe. And acknowledging that the creator is actually not abstract and separate, but available to us in the soil, right there in the soil. The Naga people and Indigenous people in India, they have more than a dozen festivals for seeds every year. And they say the creator, the name of the creator is the one who goes down into the soil with the seed. That every time germination occurs, the creator is enabling that germination to occur. We are in a web of interdependence. The insects that are in my backyard are making it possible for reproduction to happen for the plants and trees that we need to feed the soil. We understand that we don't really even fully understand how soil works. All of the aspects of what I've been taught to call the invisible ones that make it possible for us to grow food, or for food to grow, that we are in a symbiotic relationship. And that is not something to be celebrated once a week, but actually to be acknowledged with reverence every single day, and in the first moment of consciousness, and in the last moments of consciousness, and all day long, that we are in a relationship of interdependence with the earth itself. Wenzel Nosey, who's the leader of Apache Stronghold, that's an Apache resistance to the decimation of Oak Flat, a sacred ground that is being exploited for copper, says that the beginning of all resistance is prayer. And that is certainly what I have learned from my elders as well. And that prayer is an acknowledgement every single day that I am part of systems of life. I am not separate. I have no dominion. I am interdependent. I am a fragile being that depends on these life support systems of air, sacred water, and soil. And so is everybody else. That for me is the beginning of resistance. That's the beginning of resistance, that acknowledgement together of reality, not a reality that's constructed and controlled by us, but the reality of the earth and its life support systems that enables all life. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So beautiful. Josias, love to hear from you.
Bueno, enquanto Sarah hablaba, yo pensaba sobre todo eso y hablar sobre de dónde surge la resistencia y de dónde busco, en qué tradiciones busco esa, esa fuerza para resistir. Me vem à memória lo que o Papa Francisco falava quando percebia los descartados de la tierra. Con este término, el Papa miraba a las personas y también los seres no humanos que pasan por una condición desproporcional de resistir. Y yo pienso que no es el cambio climático, pero que sí a la crisis climática, porque el cambio, para mí, me parece que es el clima que está mudando y no es. La crisis está siendo una consecuencia de las acciones humanas en cuanto a agente de destrucción. Entonces, ¿cómo resistir a las crisis climáticas? Yo pienso que es un proceso totalmente desproporcional. Y eso me hace pensar que yo particularmente no tengo ninguna esperanza en los gobiernos establecidos, cualquiera que sean, ni los que buscan poder para alcanzar el gobierno. Siempre que pienso en el poder, pienso en la exploración. Y no es eso que va a nos librar de los problemas que vienen de las crisis climáticas. Pero que digo eso porque los estados-naciones estructuran sus acciones en torno del poder financiero. Y eso se establece en la exploración de la naturaleza, algo que no tiene a ver con el término economía. El término economía tiene otro significado, que es las reglas de la casa común. y no tienen que ver con la relación financiera, pero que esta palabra tem sido corrompida para el pensamiento financiero, ¿no? De modo que también no tengo ninguna esperanza en los eventos que tienen un verniz ambiental y sean propuestos por esa esfera. Como tenemos visto, los principales financiadores son extremadamente los grandes poluidores y exploradores de la creación. Entonces, de un punto tenemos los gobiernos establecidos que tienen su mirada en el desenvolvimiento, que es esencialmente explorador. De otro lado, tenemos los grandes eventos ambientales que tienen como financiadores los grandes poluidores. Entonces, yo no tengo ninguna esperanza en quien detiene, en que tiene poder. Yo tengo esperanza en el pueblo de la tierra, en las resistencias que se establecieron históricamente por defender la tierra a cual sí pertenece. O sea, yo pertenzo a la tierra, no ella es una mercadoría que me pertenece. Yo no miro la resistencia a surgir. Yo veo la resistencia a continuar. La lucha de los pueblos indígenas por preservar su tierra ancestral, en la lucha de las comunidades ribeirinhas, en mantener el ecosistema equilibrado. Yo tengo esperanza en la resistencia de las comunidades quilombolas que se mantienen firmes desde la colonización. Son, para nosotros pueblos indígenas, son 525 años acá, en este territorio de resistencia constante. Es una resistencia ancestral. De mismo modo, yo entiendo que el proceso de mi espiritualidad, mi fe, yo entiendo ese proceso a partir del Evangelio de Jesús y busco la inspiración en el testimonio de lo Hijo de Dios sobre todo que crió, como indicó que deberíamos nos posicionar. Porém, pero antes de la fe que se materializa en la religión cristiana, yo soy un hombre indígena en la retomada ancestral y en la sabiduría ancestral yo encuentro la orientación necesaria para la resistencia diante de los avances de la degradación. Y tengo, tento apresentar esse processo para nosso espaço religioso de fé cristiana, livre de qualquer intenção proselitista, ou seja, de cambiar a religião cristiana para uma, talvez, religião indígena, por isso não existe, mas de construir aprendizados. Com isso não estou dizendo que abromanos de la espiritualidade em Jesus. Por contrario, en Jesús yo miro el Dios ancestral encarnado. Dios es un Dios, ancestral. Isso porque percebo en la tradición indígena que el Criador ya se relacionaba de muchas formas desde de mis ancestros, como también con mi pueblo en los bosques, las florestas. Y después confirmo eso con el fato de perceber en el texto bíblico cuando el autor de Hebreos, en el capítulo 1, habla a respecto de lo Dios ancestral, que ya hablaba a los antiguos por intermedio de los profetas y de sus ancestrales, y hoy habla por su Hijo. Entonces, estamos hablando de un Dios que no se relaciona con la iglesia de lo agronegócio. Estamos hablando de un Dios que habla con las comunidades empobrecidas, con las comunidades que se relacionam harmonicamente com a natureza e nos ensinam a colher a erva que trata nosso corpo e com isso celebrar em todo o processo de cultivo, de sembrar, de cultivar, e nos ensina constantemente o caminho da resistência à crise climática se constrói com harmonia em la criação. Eu entendo como espiritualidade, em palavras simples, a prática daquilo que cremos. Se cremos que Deus ama a todo o mundo criado, devemos amar o que Ele amou. Compreendo que nadie pode defender nem cuidar o que não ama. Isso é espiritualidade para mim, e é o que tenho aprendido em las comunidades indígenas. Eu amo a natureza porque sou parte dela, e por ser parte dela, eu vou defendê-la com minha vida, e vou defender a Madre Tierra. E eu vou defender porque é em la Madre Tierra que o Deus criador de todas as coisas se manifesta e se apresenta. Então, é aí a que eu consigo mirar esperanza para seguir resistiendo.
Gracias, Josias. Muchas gracias, Sarah. Ya han estado un poco respondiendo esta pregunta. Gracias por las otras preguntas que ya se han puesto en el chat y Claudia por traducirlas al otro idioma. Sarah y Josias, si quieren ir viendo, ya próximamente vamos a entrar en tiempo para compartir sus respuestas a estas preguntas. Pero la última entonces que ahora tenemos tal vez es ¿cuáles son sus sueños y su mensaje para las iglesias y para los creyentes, tanto del norte global como del sur global, cuando pensamos en crisis climática, racismo y colonización? Lo que deseen compartir y luego entonces entramos en las otras preguntas. Tal vez si quieres Sara primero.
¿Soy yo?
A ver, Sara primero.
Sí, sí. Bueno.
In the coalition to dismantle the doctrine of discovery, we see ourselves as the messengers to the church. We're the messengers. And we're calling on people of faith to rise up and join the movements of liberation for Indigenous peoples, to join those movements. We train and prepare and accompany Christians, particularly those that are settler descended, to join liberation movements that are already in process that are led by Indigenous peoples. My hope is in the movement of ordinary women and men to acknowledge reality as it really is. We live in a closed system of mutual dependence, and to join together collectively to shape reality. I so agree with what Josias said. I don't have any hope in any government or in any large NGO or anyone that is peddling a short-term solution to a complex problem. We must rise up as the people of God and join our kin, our Indigenous kin, who are already defending sacred lands and waters. That call gives me hope. And the many, many, many people each day who join our movement also give me hope. As we put our bodies next to the bodies of Indigenous land and water protectors, we embody true solidarity. Solidarity is not clicking a button on a computer. It's not signing a petition. It's not sending a letter, it's putting our bodies side by side with those people who are our land and water protectors. Acknowledging not that we as Christians are good people with good intent who have excess time and money to share with the less fortunate, a way that we have behaved that ensures and reinforces power imbalance, but instead acknowledging that we are kin. We are interdependent and we are kin. And in that acknowledgement of a kinship relationship, we don't stand by and watch our kin be eradicated from the surface of the earth. Rather, we join side by side because the outcome is shared by us all. And that understanding is something that we accompany people in learning that and understanding that fully. And that is gives me great joy. And I want to close by saying the body of Christ is described by Jesus in parables as being salt and light. If you light a candle in a very dark room, no matter how large it is, that light goes to every corner of the room, even if it's tiny. And even a small amount of salt can make an entire meal salty and flavorful. We don't have to say, we can't join a movement until we know we're going to win. Rather, we lift up our lives and spend our lives in resistance, in joyful resistance of the principalities and powers of uncreation, together with our kin, with our indigenous kin. And in that process, we find life and life abundant. And that gives me hope. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Con respecto a el papel de la iglesia y yo que puedo hablar para ella, yo gustaría de hacer una diferenciación, porque por iglesia tenemos dos cuerpos. Uno es la institución. Esa es humana, muy falla. Otra es el cuerpo de Jesús. Esa necesita seguir la cabeza, que es ello. Entonces, a respecto de la primera, yo tengo bastante tristeza porque mayoritariamente en Brasil, la iglesia viene haciendo un papel de apoyar la exploración de la creación y no dando cuenta de su responsabilidad con el racismo y con la exploración de pueblos no blancos. Eso como mano de obra esclavizada ao longo da história, que não pode ser esquecida, não pode ser olvidada. Bem como de los pueblos oprimidos en la contemporaneidad, por ejemplo, en la jornada de trabajo exhaustiva y sin garantía de sus derechos de forma minimamente razoável. Isso é muito triste de constatar. E essa é uma constatação especificamente evidenciada por causa do neoliberalismo que impera sobre a contemporaneidade, que mais se apresenta como o neocolonialismo exploratório e que é legitimado por grande parte de los cristianos e cristianas que conduzem suas igrejas consigo e buscam poder. O que miramos acontecer em la direção contrária é por parte, por parte da igreja de hoje. Tem sido uma exceção a esta regla, infelizmente, o que se hace contrário a isso. Podemos ver este fenômeno em algumas igrejas que se posicionam. Eu não puedo tristemente falar que são as denominações cristianas, senão que algumas igrejas locais, movimentos cristianos que entendem o chamado do Criador à conversão. Por eso, lo que puedo decir para las iglesias, tal vez sea tal vez fuese reproducir la carta del pastor Martin Luther King Jr. para decir que mi sueño se alinea con su sueño. Mas para allá de eso puedo decir que sin medo de cualquier equívoco, yo mi sueño, y ahí va mi charla para la iglesia, es que el cuerpo de Cristo se revele en la tierra, evidenciando la gran iglesia de Jesús, su cuerpo, que actúa para que podamos vivenciar nuevos cielos y nueva tierra con todos los seres en la creación, de forma que viramos para Isaías capítulo 11. Yo sueño con la superación de la opresión, sueño con el día en que las chicas, los chicos negros indígenas no precisen bajar sus cabezas porque de ellas es el reino de Dios. Yo digo eso para la iglesia, porque si la iglesia escucha eso, la iglesia se convierte. Es mi gran sueño. Gracias.
Thank you both for those visions and dreams and calls to action. Before we move into our open Q&A, just wanted to take a moment to ask Sarah and Josias if you had questions for the other that you would like to ask. All right. Oh, Sarah, please.
I don't have a question, just grateful to be here with you. What a blessing to get to be in the same space with you. Thank you.
Sim, digo lo mismo. Estoy muy grato y muy feliz de estar aquí con ustedes. Por mí pasaríamos todo el día. Okay. Muchas gracias por eso. Vamos a las preguntas.
Wonderful, wonderful. So yes, moving to our questions that have been posed. I'd like to begin with this first one from Coqueiral Stringer. I think it's a little bit more directed towards Sarah, but you're both welcome to respond. The question is, the reality of ecological overshoot and continued economic growth have been brought up here and also in Sarah's book. And this person would like to hear how to frame a moral economy and a theology of abundance in a context that puts such a high premium on extraction and the accumulation of wealth. Sarah, did you have a response?
Yeah, I mean, that's often a question that people ask. They want to know what an alternative economy is. And to that, I respond, such a thing comes out of the people. We have an opportunity to now partner with Indigenous peoples and Indigenous peoples' cosmologies to imagine and dream and build a world that does not yet exist. To that end, we embarked on a Indigenous Systems Thinker series where we interviewed Indigenous systems thinkers from the United States and Canada and Australia. That lecture series sits on our website. It gives us the opportunity to understand economy through the lens of Indigenous cosmology. We also assigned a team of Christians to sit with those interviews over time when they were happening, but then together as we're breaking these down for congregations to find a through line. What are we learning? What is the thing that we're learning from these Indigenous leaders, from these different communities across the world? One thing that I would share is it must be based on an assumption of interdependence. So there are two principles that I would bring forward. One is the idea that nothing can be done unless it is a benefit to all of creation. If you're making an economic decision, it has to be consulted through the lens of being a benefit to all of creation. And if it's not a benefit to all of creation, then it can't happen. Another way to put this, it's Sophie Pierre, who's a woman from British Columbia and tribal leader who focused on economic development. Another, a healer from Dene lands said it has to be win-win-win, win for me, win for you, win for the earth. If it isn't a win for all of us, then it can't happen. And so here is an idea that both of these elders brought forward that I think is so crucial. The idea of winning and losing is time bound. It's bound within time. So if I win and you lose, Cheryl, that's only in this instant, because a loss for you is ultimately a loss for me. There is no distance between us. We're connected. And we have to replace the logic of domination with a logic of kinship, which is reality, actually. That's the true reality. And I think finding these assumptions, we can then build an economy that prioritizes systems of care, which is what Tyson Yunkaporta, the intellectual and scholar from Australia, really revealed. That having, for example, health as an outcome is a foolish outcome. Why would we have health as an outcome? Every one of us is going to die. You know, once again, this sort of short-term thinking, instead of building systems of care so that we know that everyone will be cared for, regardless of where we are in our health journey, because every one of us is going to decline. If we can only acknowledge that and internalize that, this is an Indigenous way of thinking, that we're not striving for health, we're striving for well-being, that we find well-being in the collective and our community together and our collective, not just with other humans, but with all life. So there are some thoughts, maybe not very satisfying, but I also want to say the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery is intent on finding and building, dreaming, finding, building a world that does not yet exist. So it's not passive, just sitting in an armchair saying, I wonder what. No, we are asking those questions every day and seeking to live out the answers.
Thank you. Those are very helpful guideposts. Would you like to respond as well to the question?
Si me escuchan a mí, puedo tratar de hacer la otra pregunta para Josias, entonces, que le dejas a Yara aquí en el chat. Ella dice, al principio mencionabas el concepto de racismo religioso. ¿Puedes decir algo más sobre eso? ¿Qué quiere decir? Y también sobre lo difícil que es desenredar la doctrina de la conquista del cristianismo. ¿Cómo ves que la teología decolonial ayuda o no a este proceso?
Bueno, es bueno que estamos a responder una pregunta por vez. Dios sea loado, porque las preguntas tienen una complejidad, entonces es mejor. Sí, déjame hablar sobre Primero, gracias, Yara, por una pregunta tan importante porque el racismo religioso tal vez no sea una realidad en todos los territorios que están aquí hoy representados, pero que en Brasil es una realidad muy, muy fuerte, muy fuerte. El racismo religioso es la postura en Brasil de los cristianos y cristianas que se posicionan contra personas de otras religiones, sobre todo las religiones de matrices africanas e indígenas, poniendo sobre ellas el título de diabólico y demoníaco, y a partir de eso se desarrolla toda una estructura de violencia, desde la destrucción de sus casas, de sus ambientes de espiritualidad, también la agresión física hasta la muerte. Son cristianos, ditos muy piedosos, ditos que siguen a Dios, pero que miran el otro que es diferente de sí y enxergan un enemigo que debe ser destruido. Entonces, esto todo estructurado sobre la idea de la religión que sea correcta o la religión que sea incorrecta. Entonces, el racismo religioso es eso. En el mundo tenemos otros ejemplos, ¿no? Pero que en mi realidad es cuando los cristianos que tienen sido la mayoría en Brasil, sea evangélico o católicos, se estructuran en una posición fundamentalista para hacer agresiones contra los otros. Un caso muy triste que ocurre todos los días aquí en Brasil es la muerte de personas de fe, de espiritualidad indígena, por ejemplo. Há pouquíssimo tempo, ou un grupo de evangélicos en un pueblo indígena ateó fuego en una casa de reza. Casa de reza es el ambiente donde el chamán atiende a las personas. Y dentro de la casa, estaban una mujer y un hombre, los dos chamans de aquel pueblo, y fueron muertos con fuego dentro de la casa por personas evangélicas. Eso es o ejemplo más doloroso de racismo religioso, ¿no? Siguiendo, habló sobre lo difícil desenredar de la doctrina de la conquista del cristianismo. Sí, sí. Necesitamos lembrar que el cristianismo es una construcción colonial. Necesitamos lembrar que el colonialismo nace en Constantino, un emperador colonizador que mira el movimiento de Jesús en la iglesia primitiva que hacía 300 años, aproximadamente 300, 400 años, y percebe que necesitaba apoderarse de la fuerza de ese grupo para que pudesse resolver sus problemas en las provincias del Imperio Romano. Entonces, cambió el grupo de Jesús en una religión del Estado, pondo mucha plata, mucho poder, tornó, mejor, construyó el cristianismo. Entonces, a partir de eso, Constantino conquista espacios en las mentes y corazones de las personas que estaban alcanzadas. A partir de eso, todo lo cristianismo de la Europa tiene por objetivo alcanzar los territorios no cristianos, territorios primitivos, para darle luz. De ahí viene el iluminismo y darle progreso, pero que ninguna de esas cosas era su objetivo, sino conquistar. La conquista, la invasión que se da en Brasil es una invasión cristiana. La coroa y la iglesia estaban juntas para explorar mi tierra, que tiene por nombre Pindorama, la tierra de las palmeras de mi pueblo. Entonces, es muy difícil hacer la desconexión de cristianismo y de la idea de la conquista, da mesma forma de cristianismo y la invasión y la opresión y la dominación. Es muy difícil. Pero que tenemos una herramienta, ¿no? El pensamiento decolonial, la ecoteología decolonial o la teología decolonial no son la resolución, no. No somos personas que piensan y tienen una herramienta que se estructura en la posibilidad de escuchar las diversas voces al respecto. Y la Biblia nos dice que en la multitud de las palabras reside la sabiduría, ¿no? En el eurocentrismo nós temos uma voz. No colonialismo nós temos uma voz, que é a voz do poder. En el pensamiento decolonial, nos pomos a escuchar la diversidad de voces. Entonces, Dios habla en medio de la multitud.
Thank you for that response. I'd love to ask more questions, but I'm noticing our time, so I'll pass it over to Nettie.
Nidhi, I think Cheryl has passed it over to you.
Ok.
Mhm.
Ok, entiendo entonces que lamentablemente no tenemos más tiempo. Creo que la pregunta que había hecho Revocatus Leonard sobre qué podemos hacer, cómo podemos apoyar las comunidades vulnerables, en cierta forma, Sara la respondió hace poco, así que esperamos que así haya sido. Creo que si Sara o Josias tienen algún último pensamiento que quieran compartir en este momento, con eso cerramos y luego sí le doy el pase a Cheryl para que ya nos despida. Así que Josias o Sarah, adelante, si quieren decir una última palabra. Bienvenido.
Una cosita, yo estoy viendo que tiene muchas cosas las preguntas. Yo puedo tal vez responder a través de email después. Yo miré Marshall que escribió para mí, ya tomé nota de su email, tentaremos hablar, pues ello está en Pernambuco. Me gustaría mucho poder responder las otras preguntas y puedo hacerlo por email después si ustedes pueden me mandar las cuestiones de las otras personas. Me gustaría mucho poder colaborar, compartir un poquito que Dios te me permitido, entonces, para que nosotros y nosotras podamos caminar mejor, ¿no?
Thank you for that, Josias. And yes, Sarah, please.
I would just like to encourage people to find us at dismantlediscovery.org. We are a movement of ordinary people, and we really long to be in relationship with you. And you can find us there. We have many public meetings every single month on Zoom. Please do look for us there. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I think this is just a beautiful way to wrap up, to the reminder that the struggle continues. There are ways to continue connection, involvement. Please do follow up on those links, and also look into Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary and our certificate programs, as well as Lutherans Restoring Creation, our sponsors today. Thank you so much to Josias and to Sarah for really insightful, profound, and very convicting calls to action for all of us to join the movement, to not simply do so in simple ways, but to really put our bodies and our lives into the struggle alongside those who don't have any choice but to be in the struggle for justice on the front of racism and climate change. So thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to our facilitators, our translators, all the folks helping behind the scenes, all the ways that all of creation has been with us, supporting us and making these connections possible around the world. We will be sharing this recording with all of you who were attending. You could also find a recording of this on YouTube if you'd like to share it. And finally, we will be having the third conversation in our series coming up in October. So we'll be sharing more information about that, but that will be another dialogue exploring the intersection of race and climate change. Thank you so much for being here. Please do continue to honor the day of Juneteenth, National Indigenous Peoples Day in Canada coming up on Saturday as well, and all of the remembrances of this time of year. Blessings to you all. Be well and stay safe until we can meet again. Thank you.